Yay! Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, the show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist, and I'm in private practice. And I'm also the parent, father of an ADHD child. And now that we look at it a little more carefully, possibly two. Plus, I have a number of in-laws that are been diagnosed and treated for ADHD. And we started this whole business with ADHD back before there was such a thing as ADHD. I don't know if you notice or know it, but ADHD was described in the medical literature in the 1780s. But it had all sorts of weird names. The descriptions were right on, but the titles, if you will, the diagnostic categories were just odd, shall we say. And now, let's see, as of 1987, we have ADHD. It's ADHD and nothing else. But there are more myths about ADHD than probably any other disorder, at least the ones I normally deal with. Okay, as a psychologist and a neuropsychologist, I get a lot of neurology, I get a lot of psychology, but probably ADHD is the one that is the most misunderstood. And it's a little bit disheartening because myths, these are just falsehoods. These are just fairy tales that aren't supported by research and call into question a whole bunch of things. And so from time to time, I like to go over some of the myths. I'm not going to cover them all because they're just too darn many, but we'll start off with the first one. ADHD isn't real. It's not actually a thing. It's just an excuse for bad behavior. You hear this over and over, especially if you're the parent of a hyperactive kiddo. You probably hear that. Oh, I don't know, from the neighbors, from other people that are in the PTA with you, all sorts of stuff. But they're wrong, okay? ADHD is a real, no kidding thing. We have all sorts of good neurologic data that support that there's a difference in the brains of ADHD people compared to neurotypical people. Okay, and they aren't things we made up. There are things that were actually researched and proven to be different. And the differences cause the problems in behavior that you see with ADHD. They cause the inability to control attention, the inability to sustain attention, the extremely poor working memory. All of these things are the result of neurotransmitter deficits that cause the prefrontal cortex primarily, although there are other parts of the brain that are affected, to be less efficient than it could be. And the prefrontal cortex is a really important part of your brain. That does most of all the executive functions, and is the first step in lots of other processes that are centered a little bit in different places in the brain. But we know that ADHDers have lower levels of, dopamine for one, which is the one that makes you feel like you've done a good job, that you're satisfied with your work. It also helps you pay attention. And norepinephrine is also another one. I'm not going to go list all of them, but just suffice to say that it's a real thing. It can be measured by scientific assay, if you will, and it causes real life difficulties. Okay, that should answer the next one. The myth, the idea that accommodations, the extra things you get in school for having ADHD are somehow an unfair advantage. No, they're not unfair. Basically, what it tries to do is get you so you're competitive with kids who don't have ADHD. That you can, that you have troubles getting things done as fast, that you have trouble staying focused, all those sorts of things. That's why you get extra time for tests, extra time for homework assignments, that kind of stuff. That's fair in the sense that it makes you, what it tries to do is compensate for the ADHD. So you don't have an unfair disadvantage. Okay? Now that's a big deal. That's one of those things we, as parents of ADHD kids, for God's sake, that this is not, we're not making this up, that we have some real problems here. Another big fake belief is that people outgrow ADHD. Okay. Generally speaking, people do not outgrow ADHD. If they had it as kids, they've got it as adults. They may be better at hiding it, compensating for it, but they still got it. Okay? The only thing that diminishes somewhat is the most overt signs of hyperactivity. Those tend to be less obvious. Although if you've ever sat in my office for an afternoon doing intake interviews, you can tell the ADHD adults, they're the ones that have got some kind of jiggle going on, either they're jiggling their foot or tapping their foot or doing something with their hands, but there's an extra little motor running somewhere. Okay, so you don't outgrow it. The other thing that is frequently thought is that only boys get ADHD. Again, this is not so. But there is a difference between boys and girls with ADHD. The boys with ADHD tend to be hyperactive. So they get noticed. They're the ones tipping over furniture and running through the halls at school and that sort of thing. Girls tend to be the inattentive type of ADHD. That is, they're just sitting there quietly, but their minds are on Mars or someplace, They're thinking about unicorns and rainbows. They're not paying attention. And they still have the same problems with staying focused that the ADHD boys have. Okay, now, as the parent of a child with ADHD, I particularly object to this, that ADHD is caused by bad parenting. The nice doctor does not like it when people say that. Okay. The deal with ADHD is that it's flippin' genetic. It's inherited. It runs in families. Okay? If I have an ADHD kid in my office, the odds are pretty good that one of the two parents is also ADHD. Okay? That, if you're familiar with this, the heritability index, that is the likelihood that the next generation is going to have it, or any individual in the next generation is going to have it, is 85%, which is incredibly high. Okay, that's like almost, you're guaranteed. Okay, so it is not caused by bad parenting. It's caused by bad genetics, if you want to put it that way. But none of us have any control over that. But it's a genetic, it's a neurologic condition that's genetic and you inherited. Okay, you didn't have a choice. It's not because your mother ate too many candy bars during the pregnancy. It's not because you have smokers in the home. It's, none of these terrible environmental things have anything to do with ADHD. It didn't cause it, and I will tell you that ADHDs are more sensitive to spikes in blood sugar, changes in their blood sugar levels that makes you wish you had never given him a candy bar, but um, that's not the same thing as being the cause. Okay, and here's another one that is really, I'd say, controversial. Okay, what we know is the most efficient treatment for ADHD is medication. The fastest and most efficient way of treating ADHD is with stimulant medication. Okay, now there are all kinds of beliefs about this that, if you give a kid 88 stimulants, doesn't that mean they're going to be more likely to abuse drugs later on in life? No, it doesn't, as a matter of fact. Matter of fact, if you treat say you get lucky and you identify your child and when they're 7 or 8 years old, by the time they get to the age where they might think about drugs, they've already got their ADHD under pretty good control. That makes them less likely to use drugs, to abuse drugs, even though they've got, some stuff right in their little medicine chest. They're less likely to abuse it than somebody who, well, certainly than somebody who is not treated for ADHD. And we have to constantly be aware of that because, okay, some of the saddest cases I see are people who are in their 30s. And for some reason, even if they were identified as ADHD, they were never treated. Okay, so they hit their 30s and they're having trouble sustaining relationships. They're having trouble sustaining employment. They're not satisfied with their lives. And they come in and they're pretty depressed a lot of times. A few of them are angry, but that's neither helpful or logical. But they're not happy campers. Of course, even at this age, treating them improves things. Okay, an interesting thing that some research studies have indicated is that if you start your child, there are certain changes, differences in the brains of ADHDers versus neurotypicals. So, some areas are just a tad smaller than in a neurotypical brain. And for people who are on stimulant medication, those differences tend to go away. So, I was pretty surprised at that actually, but that's what the research says. And I kind of like to believe it because, well, I read the studies, I know what kind of controls there are, and I know it's not just something they picked up in the grocery store talking to the checkout counter or something. They've got real proof, and they've done the research and controlled for other possible things that might have affected their results. Okay, here's my least favorite one. ADHDers are stupid and lazy and will never amount to anything. Wow. Okay, then what do we know? Actually, we know that a large number of people with ADHD are overachievers. The Mike Phelps, the Mozarts, the Benjamin Franklins, Abraham Lincoln, Steve Jobs. Just a huge number of people who succeeded in spite of their ADHD. And most likely it's because they're in situations that require that kind of unique problem solving that they seem to have, the ability to see unusual solutions to unusual problems. And boom, we're all of us wearing Apple Watches and carrying iPhones in our pocket. Um, so, and the research does not suggest that ADHDers' IQs are lower than any other group of people. And it doesn't suggest that they're any less, well, they are actually more creative than most people, certainly than a lot of neurotypical people. So that's definitely not a valid conclusion to draw about ADHDers. They're every bit as smart, if not a little brighter. My particular ADHD child happens to have the highest IQ, let's say, compared to his siblings. I never compared him to his parents. That's dangerous. But he has the highest IQ of the kids, and they're all 120 plus people. So he's awfully high. But he still, he runs into problems because, the whole staying focused, the whole staying organized, the whole, he's 40 plus years old now, and he's still, if he's visiting, it takes him 2 or 3 trips to get out of the house because he keeps forgetting stuff. That's just one of those things. Fortunately, it doesn't affect his life that much. But the big thing with ADHDers is school. School is School is designed to make life miserable for ADHD kids. It insists on all the things that they're not very good at, like sitting quietly for extended periods of time, like getting projects done on time. And we actually have, still in this day and age, teachers that grade more by did you get the homework in on time than by your test scores, which would suggest that it's more important that you be compliant than that you learn anything. So, I consider this to be a flawed way of looking at the educational system and a flawed way of looking at all your students out there for you teachers. So, again, ADHD does not mean you're dumb. It means you have problems applying the intelligence you have in a consistent way. That's all it means. And you have troubles with the school system because the school system values compliance above all else. Do what I told you when I told you to do it, and get it in when I told you to do it. And those are things they have problems with. And that's, that will go with them to whatever jobs they have. But if they get into a job that requires problem solving, creativity, and the environment is calm and relaxed, they will do great. So that's my latest battle with the myths. Okay, and Lord knows there are tons of them. I just saw another article somewhere this week listing 15 myths. I just gave you 7 and hinted at a couple more, but just 7. But there are way more, and I will talk some more about those eventually. But for right now, that's what I got. And my website is terrygingrassphd.com. From there you can get on my list and get extra articles and things that I do. I'm also I do do this, and I'm probably going to start at double the number of times I do Facebook Lives, and I'm doing 2 or 3 Instagrams a week too, at various times. At that one I haven't got down, so it's a pattern yet, but it will be pretty soon. And we're also thinking about doing a podcast, so I'll be busier and I'll be more available. And if you guys have any questions or would like me to talk about anything in particular, please communicate that to me. This works best if it's kind of a two-way street. I can, well, I can, get meet your needs better if you let me know what they are, instead of me guessing. I can go a certain path with that because, I've had an ADHD kid or two, and what's that's like. And, but your situation may be a little different. They don't come out cookie cutter style. Okay, we will catch you next week. Please communicate with me. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.